Cool. Okay, so I believe Tom is going to orchestrate the switching back and forth between folks if they are not sharing their screen or if they're using the gallery. So let me turn it over to Tom for our first presenter. How are we doing on time? 10:45, and Bill, you have till 11:05.
Okay.
Yep, we are good. So Bill, go ahead and why don't you go ahead and share your screen.
All right. Then we're going to use this one.
There.
Can you see that?
Yep.
Yep. Good. Good. Well, this is where we're going to start. This is a map. I live in a retirement community called Montecedro in Altadena, California, and one of our other members had this map. Her name is Helen Zeiler, and she said to me one day, "You like maps? Well, I've got one. Maybe you'd be interested in." So she brought it over, and I looked at it. And without too much, I said, "Yeah, I'd like to have that, or I'd like to use it." And so that's where this comes from. It's also in Glenn Creason's book called Mapping Los Angeles. So if you want to look for that, you can see it there. But what we're going to do is we'll look at the overall map first, which is, come on, there we go. Okay, this is the overall map. It's Southern California. It says Greater Los Angeles, and it's by the Metropolitan Associates, whoever that was. And it shows what this part of the country looked like in 1932. So we're going to look at specific parts of that map, starting out with the index down in the corner here. There we go. And it has all sorts of interesting things that tourists would want to know about Los Angeles. For example, the Breakfast Club location, the Griffith Park Writing Academy, the Sebastian New Cotton Club, we'll see. And in any case, it also gives the name of the fellow who did the map. His name is K.M. Leuschner, and he's MRA. I don't know what MRA stands for, but that's what he is. So anyway, he's the one that did it. So we're going to look at specific parts of the map and things that might be of interest. Downtown Los Angeles, you can tell that very easily by the fact that it's canted off from north-south. Here's the Vermont Avenue over here, which is the north-south, and over in here is another street that keeps it north-south, and the rest of that's within the original land grant of Foursquare, what? I don't know. Anyway, we're going to look at this map a little bit closer. If we pull in on a close-up of that map, right here we can see the park downtown, Pershing Square. We can see the Los Angeles City Hall right over here, the big tall building that was for many years the highest building in Los Angeles at 13 stories. This is where the old Philharmonic Auditorium used to be. They tore it down in the 1960s because they wanted to build a much better Philharmonic Auditorium than that on the same site. It's now a parking lot, which it's been since the 1960s. So that's another part of that map. Okay, well, moving on, we're going to go look to the watery side of Los Angeles, which includes then San Pedro and Wilmington down here. And the thing I want you to notice here is here are these big hotels in Long Beach, which is this area right in here. And those big hotels are there because before the breakwater that encloses all of Los Angeles Harbor was built, this was open ocean. There were waves coming into those beaches that made it an interesting place to go, where today it's dead water behind the expanded LA Harbor. This is as big as LA Harbor was in the 1930s. So give you an idea of what that looked like. Now we're going to go to the north and look at the top side of the map, and this is Pasadena, Altadena, San Gabriel over here. We'll look at this in a little more detail as well, but just so you see, there are places like Altadena up here, which we're going to look at. Here's the Huntington Library over in here. Okay, Huntington Boulevard across through that way. No freeways, of course, but those some highlights for that particular one. Moving on down to the southwest, this is sort of centered on Culver City, and we see some piers sticking out here that we'll look at a little more. But this just gives you an idea from Palos Verdes up through into Santa Monica. if we look at that closely, there are a couple of piers sticking out. One of them, the Santa Monica Pier, which is still there, of course, Ocean Park Amusement Park, and another one over in here. I like this Ocean Park Amusement Park because you'll see there's this crystal pier, and here are these boxes on the sides of the crystal pier, which are nude sunbathing places. I thought that was terrific. I didn't realize we had any of those right in the middle of what today would be Venice and that kind of area. But there they are, and they've got fences around them so that you had to pay to get in. I'm sure that's the story of that. Well, if we looked at Long Beach, this is what it looked like in the 1930s. You see people out camping on the sand here, enjoying the wonderful weather. The Pike is down hidden behind this building over in here. This was a very great place to go and have a good time with your kids or by yourself. By the 1960s or so, it had degenerated. The big breakwater had been completed all across, so it was quiet. And this became a thing called Pacific Ocean Park. Some of you might remember Pacific Ocean Park if you were my age and had children at that time. They loved this kind of place with a roller coaster and this ride out over the ocean in these enclosed cars. All right, well, we're going to go back further to northern part of Los Angeles. This is Altadena. This is Pasadena, excuse me. Here's Hotel Raymond and Hotel Maryland. Those were the big hotels in Pasadena at that time from the early 1900s up through 1930. Both of them burned down, so neither one of them exists anymore. Pasadena City Hall is still there, and so is this line of Christmas trees. This is called Santa Rosa Avenue in Altadena, and it's about a block from where I live, which is right over here. Anyway, to show you that street of a mile-long deodar trees was planted by one of the big developers of Altadena, and is still there, and the trees have all grown up, and this is what it looks like in the end of the year time, because it's called Christmas Tree Lane. If you ever come up there, it's fun to come up and drive up and down the street and look at the lovely lights. It's all done by volunteers here in Altadena, which is kind of nice. Well, okay, we'll move on down into Pasadena. Here's the famous Pasadena Bridge, Colorado Street Bridge, better known to everybody else as Suicide Bridge. And they keep putting
The
up
Costin Ostrich Farm.
Yeah, oh, well, there are a couple of hundred people over a period of 90 years have jumped off of there to their deaths. And they think by putting up big nets and fences and so on, they're going to stop that. I think there are other ways to commit suicide, but in any case, that's what it's known. Vista Del Oro Hotel overlooks that. It's now the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, who took over the beautiful hotel and made it their own. But the thing I wanted to highlight to you is down here in South Pasadena, along Pasadena Avenue, there's Costin's Ostrich Farm. I don't know whether any of you ever saw Costin's Ostrich Farm, but this is what it looked like. Bunches of ostriches wandering around. I remember going there as a child with my grandmother and feeding an ostrich an orange and then holding onto the ostrich's neck and pushing the orange up and down before it could get to its stomach. I don't think they let you do that sort of thing anymore, but that was back in the 30s. Okay, here moving on a little to the west, we see Occidental College here, Forest Lawn, of course, with their big monument, and Silver Lake down here. And here's the Breakfast Club. That was an institution in Los Angeles for many, many years. Businessmen would meet there on a Thursday morning, and they had their own all sorts of rigmarole, but their famous song was FBNEX, SVFX, meaning, of course, in German, do we have any eggs? Yes, we have eggs. And that was a song that we all sang every day that Breakfast Club met. So a kind of fun thing. Okay, a little further up, Hollywood, we can see Grauman's Chinese Theater, sort of here. Grauman's Egyptian Theater, I don't know what it is now, but it's not that anymore. And here's Paramount Famous Lasky Studios down here. Okay, well, let's go back to downtown Los Angeles. Here's the City Hall, and right behind it is this place called the Paris Inn. There's another famous place from the 1930s that looked like this. And to me, the amusing part is here's the formal side. Men better wear ties. Here's the bohemian side over here. You didn't have to wear a tie. Okay, so you could take your pick where you wanted to eat in the Paris Inn. Moving back a little further on to Hollywood, here's the Hollywood Bowl. We'll look at in a minute. And what else was there I was going to show you? Barnesville Park is over here. All right, we'll move on to the next one. Well, this is what the Hollywood Bowl looked like in the early 1900s. There weren't any stadiums. There wasn't anything. There was a little stand there, but most people stood on the side of the hillside, parked their cars down here, stayed up, parked their bodies on the side of the hill here to see what was going on down in the bottom down here. Of course, this is what it looks like today on 4th of July with 20 or 30,000 people crowded into the bowl. So that's kind of fun. All right, well, this is moving down in downtown Los Angeles, below the area we were looking at before, the business district. There are some things that are of interest. Here's the Automobile Club of Southern California. Now that was very big, and it's still a very big building down there along Figueroa. The Oddfellows Temple, and of course the Colonial Mortuary, very important spot. And here's Olympic Stadium. Now you remember it's 1932. This is just before the 32 Olympics. Nothing special, but look at this area up in here. It's something called University of Southern California. And you know, no delineation of buildings or anything else. So I sometimes think people show prejudices when they design maps, because if we go from there to here, we'll notice a little difference in this university. It's rather nicely laid out. The other university of the Los Angeles and Southern California area, UCLA, is much better laid out. Beverly Hills over in this direction over in here. Okay, moving on. Whoop, come on. Moving on, we'll go to a little south of Hollywood to the area of Wilshire Boulevard. Most people who live here know Bullock's Wilshire. It's no longer Bullock's Wilshire, but the tower is still there. And next to it, the old Brown Derby. Across the street from that, Ambassador Hotel. These are all things that were very big in that period of time. And here's another one called Bimini Bass. We'll look at that in a little more detail. In our next picture, we have the actual Brown Derby as it was in the 1930s, right up through the 60s. This was still maintained. This is the front of and it says "Eat in a Hat." This was the front of the Brown Derby. There were other places back behind it here, but this is where you wanted to eat. This is where all the movie stars and moguls came to have lunch, and they stayed at across the street. Up the street from here was Bimini Bass. Bimini Bass is a rather large-sized building. It was a plunge, that is, it was a big swimming pool. It was discovered when they were doing drilling for oil, because just beyond there is Brea and La Brea tar pits, so they knew it was there. But instead of oil, they found hot water, and so they decided to turn it into a bathing facility called Bimini Bass. So there it is. Okay. Well, now this one's, I'm sorry, this is Hollywood. Well, this is Los Feliz, Glendale, Grand Central Airport. That was a big airport back in the 30s, not anymore. It's now a shopping area. Taken over, the airport being taken over by Hollywood Burbank Airport. Below that, we found going down Alvarado and Glendale Boulevards toward Los Angeles are important landmarks like Myers Delicatessen. Actually, Angela's Temple. This is where Amy Semple McPherson held out and made a lot of money for herself and for that particular brand of religion. If we look at it today, this is the way Angela's Temple looks today. It's a rather grand building, and it's still a very grand building in there. It still stands right at the top of Echo Park. If we move down off Long Beach, here is this Johanna Smith Pleasure Ship. Now, there were a number of these that operated around Southern California, And their whole purpose was not pleasure in that end, but was a gambling ship. And we had 3 or 4 of these off coast, just beyond the 3-mile limit, had little fast acting motorboats that would take you out of the gambling ship. That's what it looked like. That's the way it ended, with the whole thing burning. And a number of them ended with being raided by United States people who were interested in making sure they didn't have free booze and gambling offshore. Moving over again to, this is San Gabriel, that area of Valley Boulevard along here. San Gabriel Mission, not a very good picture of San Gabriel Mission, but just below it is Gay's Lion Farm. Did you know we had a lion farm in Southern California? There's Mr. Gay sitting on one of his lions. Now, honestly, I believe that's a stuffed lion. Well, live ones. There were live ones there. I can attest to that. There's the county hospital and what used to be the Santa Fe Depot down here. And we'll go back to that area around Culver City because there's something interesting to see there. You see there are actually 2 airports shown in this photograph. Clover Field, which is today's Santa Monica Airport, an airport for small private planes, although they get a lot of complaints about the noise from small private jets. And then Mines Field down here. You see, much smaller than Clover Field. Mines Field transformed into something else. Here it is, Mines Field in the 1930s. Lots of space around it here. And here we see it in dedication in July of 1930. Pull that up a little more, just a moment. Yeah, Mines Field dedication in July of 1930. You see the biplanes coming in. These 2 buildings are still there. If you look across Los Angeles, LAX from the terminals, you'll see those 2 buildings still on that side over there. So, but that was the main terminal back in the 1930s. All right, there was another thing in that photograph, in that particular map that we haven't paid a lot of attention to, and that is this funny looking thing over in here called the Olympic Village. This was built specifically to house Olympic Games participants for the 32 Olympics. And you can see this is not exactly the luxurious type of hotel that somebody might expect today, but instead rather cramped little shacks in a semicircle around here. You can see there's a blimp in the background back there, way off in the back. Anyway, that's what the participants in the 1932 Olympic Games lived in. And I don't see any fences between the men's and the women's part of the thing, but that came later, I guess. All right, we move on.
Bill, if I may jump in, you
This
have
is
about
down
5
around
minutes left.
Southgate in that area there. There were a couple of very large tire manufacturing companies there, Firestone and Goodyear. Goodyear had their own blimp down here. Here's Signal Hill on the top of Long Beach here. And here's something in the middle that I never knew was there called Angelus Abbey. Angelus Abbey is still there. It's in the middle of Compton. It was a mortuary and a crematorium and so on, still stands, looks like that. Well, if we went even further south, we ran into the Palo Verde Peninsula. Today, this whole peninsula is pretty much covered with rather expensive homes. There's the country club at the top of the hill. And this is showing one road coming across to Pacific Coast Highway, which is this part here. And San Pedro is right over in here, Fort MacArthur and so on. The Green Star is an area called Portuguese Bend. And in the 1950s and 60s, or 1940s and 50s, it was really a nice place. Had a wonderful beach club there that one of my friends belonged to. We'd go down there with our kids and play in the sand, and it was lovely. The only problem, and there were bunches of houses there, not big houses, small houses. But the problem with this area was it hadn't decided whether it wanted to be a mountain or it wanted to be the bottom of the bay. And in 1956, the decision was made that it was going to slide down into the bay. So this is today's road. If you drive down there today, you run through this particular section of road like this. And all the pipes and so on supplying water have to have joints that allow them to move because this whole area is still moving. And so it's kind of an interesting place to go sometime. So if you thought Southern California was a little crazy back in the 1930s, welcome to the movie La La Land. And you may remember the 110 and the 105, 110 and 105 for coming together. This is the bypass over from coming south from Los Angeles over towards LAX. And for that movie, as you can see, they turned both sides into going in one direction, which is sort of, it would be kind of hard to get to LAX from downtown if all of the freeways only went against you. So I thought this was a typical picture of Los Angeles today. And with that, that's it, guys. Thanks for watching.
That's wonderful.
Thank you very much.
You don't all have to applaud right now. End of verse 4.
Are there questions for Bill?
Yeah, hi, this is Ron. So I put it on chat. Bill, I looked up on Google and the population of LA doubled from 1920 to 1930.
Yeah.
The population was 1.3 million. What was the great growth due to then?
Well, there were a number of things. A lot of people came to Southern California because the time they really came was after World War II. But it's also had to be an area that was very agricultural in the 1920s. We had vast orange groves and others, and people could come out here and get cheap land and plant crops that would be available all year round because the climate would allow them to grow in the winter as well as in the summer. So that was part of the incentive. There were lots of other things. The movie industry brought people in. But as I said, the biggest influx of people to Southern California came during and right after World War II. And the defense industry was very big in Southern California until LBJ decided to move it to Texas. All of it disappeared at that point in time. But it was a big incentive for people to come. Housing was cheap, which it isn't now. And in fact, more people in Southern California made fortunes off real estate than anything else. The real estate they owned and sold 20 years later at double or triple or quadruple the price they bought it for.
Bill, I had a chat question. I noticed in your index there's a list of some very famous old-time movie actors, and
Yes.
can I imagine that those are depicted on the map as well, where their houses were?
They gave the addresses. Let me pull that back up again. They gave the addresses, which is sort of strange because most people today don't want that information out. Now, I've done another one on Homes of the Hollywood Stars, and we picked out some that were rather important at various times. But most of them nowadays, if you have their address, you can't see through because there's a big gate and lots of trees growing around it. So times have changed.
But on this
People
map,
used to-
are they shown on this map by name?
Yeah, well, they give you the addresses right over in here, and they don't show them, but they give you the exact address. For example, John Barrymore was at 6 Lower Road. I don't know where that is. But in any case, yeah. Back in the 1930s and 40s, when buses would go by in a residential area where a movie star lived, quite often they would come out to the front door and wave at the buses. You don't see that happening anymore.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can, Len.
I'd like to make two comments. Wonderful presentation, Bill. And you mentioned that you were visiting the ostrich farm, I guess it was while you were a teenager or something. It's always nice to have something that you can identify with somebody famous. And in this situation, you can identify with Leonardo da Vinci because he visited the Duke of Parma, who had an ostrich farm on his royal grounds. And that's where most likely he got his idea to use ostrich eggs, which are rather tough shells, to make his globe, his famous globe. And as you know, ostrich shells are really oblong, like a hen's egg, but much bigger. And so what he did most likely is he used two ostrich eggshells, and he cut them in half and used the two bottoms to create a round earth. So you can always think of Leonardo da Vinci when you remember in the past that you visited the ostrich farm. The other thing is that from my reading and stuff, we have to realize that many times the map maker, if he was totally in charge of the making of his map, really also wanted to send some kind of a message many times, was not necessarily flat reality, as other people know it, because he wasn't just a technician being hired to make a map for a state. And so the map maker here may have left out that structure that you were talking about. Maybe he had a personal problem with the owner. Maybe he just wanted to leave it out so that it would identify this map as his. While other people, when he would say, no, we didn't copy it, we got it elsewhere, and he would show that this is the only map missing a particular thing. So we don't know the real reason why he left it out. He may have also forgotten. So thank you.
It's interesting. Carson's ostrich farm was built for the plumes, the tail feathers of the ostriches. And when they went up in the 1920s, the place died.
Yeah, they were great. Yeah, ostrich
And,
feathers were very popular.
And a lot of the ostriches were smuggled out of South Africa because it was illegal to export them.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Thanks, Louise. Okay, thank you, Bill, for a really
thank you very
interesting
much.
presentation.